From Max getting his head blown off in front of Gus, to Jane choking on her own vomit. These are the most painful deaths in Breaking Bad. Starting with Victor. Victor was one of Gus Fring's most trusted men and started watching over the superlab after Jesse went after the drug dealers who'd killed Tomas. After Jesse shot Gale, both Jesse and Walt were held captive in the lab, and while they were waiting for Gus to arrive, Walt tried to reason with Mike, insisting that they needed to cook so they could stick to the schedule.
Come on, Mike, let us cook.
Victor, trying to impress Gus, claimed he already knew the whole process and could handle the cook himself.
All his bullshit aside, and I know every step.
Walt, afraid that the end is near, starts shouting insults at Victor, thinking he could make Gus realize that he still needed to cook.
You're not flipping hamburgers here, pal. What happens when you get a bad barrel of precursor? How would you even know it?
Gus changed into a hazmat suit and picked up a box cutter. Walt's eyes locked in as he panicked, trying desperately to talk his way out, insisting Gus was too smart to kill him.
You kill me, you have nothing. You kill Jesse, you don't have me.
Without a word, Gus grabbed Victor by the throat and in one swift motion slit his neck open. Even Mike instinctively drew his gun out of pure shock at what he had just witnessed. Victor tried stopping him as he gasped for air, but his desperate attempts meant nothing as Gus locked Victor's head with his hands, draining the life out of him. Walt gagged at the blood pooling near his feet while Jesse stared in shock, traumatized by another death happening in front of him. But Gus was completely emotionless. He stepped over Victor's body, stripped off the hazmat suit, and walked away, leaving the corpse on the floor as a cold message for everyone in the room. Gus Fring. Gus Fring ran Los Pollos Hermanos like any other restaurant chain, but behind it, he'd built one of the largest meth operations in the Southwest. When Hector suffered a stroke, Gus refused to let him die. He kept him alive in a paralyzed state, ensuring he'd never get the mercy of a quick death. But his obsession with control eventually became his weakness. After Gus threatened to kill Walt's entire family,
I will kill your wife. I will kill your son. I will kill your infant daughter.
Walt decided to strike first. He visited Hector and convinced him to help by making Gus believe he had snitched. Hector agreed to play along and went to the DEA, sitting through an entire interrogation without saying a single word. When Gus learned that Hector had gone to the DEA, he realized Hector's time had come and went to the nursing home to silence him forever. Gus sat across from him and mocked him for speaking to the DEA.
A crippled little rata. What a reputation to leave behind. Is that how you want to be remembered?
At first, Hector refused to look at him, but then he slowly turned his head and locked eyes with Gus. A moment later, he started slamming the bell on his wheelchair again and again and again. And that's when Gus realized what was happening. But it was already too late. The bomb hidden under Hector's chair exploded, killing Hector, Tyrus, and Gus instantly. For a brief moment, the hallway filled with smoke and Gus walked out, adjusting his tie as if nothing had happened. But when the camera turned over, half his face was gone, and he collapsed, dead before even hitting the floor. Jane Margolis. Jane Margolis was a recovering drug addict and a tattoo artist who rented Jesse a duplex apartment. The two quickly fell in love, but after Jesse's friend Campo was killed, Jane relapsed and introduced Jesse to heroin, saying it would help him cope. But her attempt to comfort him ended up dragging them both into addiction.
On your back, baby, in case you throw up. On your side. Sleep on your side.
Jesse and Jane's addiction quickly got worse, and during this time, Jesse told her about his meth business with Walt and the money he was owed. When Walt refused to pay, Jane blackmailed him, threatening to expose his secret. Walt eventually relented and gave them the money, and the two planned to run away together to New Zealand. Later that night, Walt went to Jesse's apartment and found both of them passed out after using heroin. As Walt tried to wake up Jesse, he accidentally rolled over Jane to her back, and she started choking on her own vomit. Instinctively, Walt ran over to help, but suddenly he stopped because he realized that if Jane lived, she'd take Jesse away from him forever. So she kept choking as Walt just stood there, watching it all happen. When she finally went still, Walt's eyes filled with tears as he knew he had just crossed a line he could never come back from. No-Dose. No-Dose was one of Tuco's lackeys who accompanied him everywhere he went. At the junkyard, Walt and Jesse showed up to deliver their first big batch of blue meth, 4.6 pounds of pure, uncut product. After taking a hit, Tuco was impressed, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. But when Tuco handed over the money, No-Dose made a fatal mistake by saying,
"Just remember who you're working for."
Tuco took it as disrespect, and No-Dose immediately tried to explain himself, insisting he didn't mean it that way. Even Walt stepped in, trying to calm Tuco down.
Hey, why don't we all just relax, huh?
But then he knocked No-Dose to the ground with a punch and kept punching him in the face again and again and again. By the time it stopped, No-Dose was knocked out, and Tuco stood over him with blood dripping from his knuckles.
Oh, damn, man, look at that, look!
Walter and Jesse stood frozen while Gonzo carried No-Dose to the back of the car. After the beating, Tuco drove off with No-Dose's body, but moments later, he came back into the junkyard, blocking Walt and Jesse's path. He threw No-Dose out of the SUV and kept yelling at Heisenberg to help him.
Something! You're smart, right? Do that thing!
Walter checked for a pulse, but No-Dose was already dead. Tuco refused to believe it, and when reality hit him, he started kicking No-Dose's body and told Gonzo to get rid of him. Gonzo dragged No-Dose's body over to a stack of junked cars and left him there. But later, he came back to give his cousin a proper burial. As he climbed in to move the body, the pile of cars shifted and crushed his arm. Trapped and unable to escape, Gonzo bled out and died right next to No-Dose in the junkyard. Crazy 8. Crazy 8 was a local meth distributor who worked under Tuco Salamanca before starting his own thing. When Jesse tried selling Walt's first batch of meth, Crazy 8 knew Jesse couldn't have cooked something that pure, so he demanded to meet the real cook behind it. Jesse then brought them to the RV, and that's where everything spiraled out of control. Emilio recognized Walt from his DEA arrest and immediately accused him of being a snitch. With both men pointing guns at him, Walt realized he was seconds away from death. So, in a desperate attempt to save himself, he offered to teach them his recipe. Walter used the opportunity to mix red phosphorus with heat, creating a toxic cloud of phosphine gas. After the explosion, Walt ran to the door and slammed it shut from the outside, as Emilio suffocated and Crazy 8 fell unconscious inside. When the gas finally cleared, Walt and Jesse found Emilio dead inside the RV, but Crazy 8 was surprisingly still breathing. They dragged both of them to Jesse's house, locking Crazy 8 to a pole in the basement with a bike lock around his neck. Walt tried convincing himself that maybe Crazy 8 didn't have to die. He brought him food and started coughing on the way down the stairs and dropped the plate, which shattered across the floor. Walt later woke up and cleaned up the pieces, threw them in the trash, and made another sandwich. He went back down and sat with Crazy 8, and they talked about family, work, and for a moment, Walt started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could let him go and pretend none of this ever happened.
That's why you're cooking meth. You want to leave money for your family. Like I said, Walter, if this line of work doesn't suit you, get out before it's too late.
Eventually, Walt went to grab the key, but when he opened the trash can, he noticed a piece of the broken plate was missing. That's when he realized that Crazy 8 had kept a piece to kill him the moment he was freed. Walt walked back downstairs and pretended to unlock the bike lock.
The moment I do, are you gonna stick me with that broken piece of plate?
Crazy 8's silence said everything, and Walt finally pulled the lock tight around his neck. Crazy 8 thrashed violently, stabbing Walt's leg in desperation, but Walt held on, tightening his grip until the struggle slowly faded, and his body went limp. Spooge. Spooge was a meth addict and a small-time criminal living with his girlfriend, who had robbed Skinny Pete at knife point, stealing his meth and his cash. Skinny Pete eventually tracked down their address, and Jesse showed up at their home, and the place was littered with garbage, toys, and a neglected 2-year-old child with a padlock on his room door. When Spooge and his girlfriend finally came back, Jesse held them at gunpoint, and they agreed to pay using a stolen ATM. Jesse yelled at the mother for how she was treating the poor kid too.
What the hell kind of mother are you?
That single moment of compassion, though, became his mistake. As Jesse looked away, Spooge and his girlfriend jumped him, knocking Jesse unconscious and stealing his gun. When Jesse finally woke up, he heard someone drilling and saw Spooge under the ATM trying to pry it open. His girlfriend was begging for a hit of meth, but Spooge kept ignoring her and he kept breaking into the machine. Tension between them grew with every insult as he kept calling her a skank, which only made things worse. So she stormed over to the other side of the ATM, and Jesse knew something bad was about to happen. She placed her hand on the machine and with one hard shove sent the ATM crashing down on Spooge's head. The ATM crushed his head into tiny bits and his body twitched once before going limp. As Spooge's blood pooled beneath the ATM, his girlfriend didn't even flinch. She dug through his pockets for meth, took her hit, and slumped on the sofa like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Jesse was left staring at Spooge's dead body, unable to speak a word. Marco and Leonel Salamanca. Marco and Leonel Salamanca were cousins of Tuco Salamanca and two of the most cold-blooded killers in the Mexican cartel. They rarely spoke, but when they did, it was only to decide who to kill next. After learning of Tuco's death, the twins swore to get revenge. Their first target? Walter White. But Gus Fring had other plans. He wanted to keep Walt alive for his business, so he redirected the twins towards the cop who shot him, somebody we know by the name of Hank Schrader. Hank was sitting in his car when his phone rang.
2 men are coming to kill you.
Come again?
They're approaching your car. You have 1 minute.
I don't get the gag, Jagoff. Who is this?
At first, he thought it was a prank, but as the clock ticked, he saw Leonel in his rearview mirror and Marco closing in from the side, carrying an axe. Hank threw his car in reverse and slammed straight into Marco, crushing him between the two cars. The hit shattered Marco's spine and sent his gun flying into Hank's car. Leonel kept shooting though, and bullets tore through Hank's SUV as he ducked for cover.
Termínalo.
Following the trail of blood, Leonel stalked Hank through the parking lot. Hank desperately tried to take him down. However, the bullets did nothing against Leonel's bulletproof vest. Hank emptied the clip, but Leonel kept firing back and managed to hit him twice. Leonel was about to end Hank's life with his pistol, but the quick death felt like a courtesy, one that Hank didn't deserve. So he turned back to his car, grabbed the silver axe, and dragged it as he approached Hank to end his life. But Hank saw a single bullet on the ground, so with trembling hands and second by second, he loaded it into his gun just as Leonel lifted the axe to strike. Hank pulled the trigger and then blew his head clean off. Marco survived his attack and was taken to the hospital in critical condition where his legs were amputated. But Gus Fring couldn't risk him talking. Disguised as a friendly hospital visit, he showed up with the trays of Los Pollos Hermanos to distract the agents, while Mike quietly slipped into Marco's room and gave him a lethal injection. By the time the doctors rushed in, his heart had already stopped. And folks, that wraps up our list. Let us know which death shocked you the most, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And if you want to see why some of these deaths were so deserved, check out our video on every deserved death in Breaking Bad. Thanks for watching.